Welcome back to Get Paid for Your Pad. Today I have a very young guest on the podcast, but he's got already a lot of experience in the short-term rental space. He's a true Airbnb rock star with 13 units, 2 owned, based out of North Carolina. And I think he owned his first real estate at the age of 21, which is very impressive. So Bailey Kramer, welcome to the show.
Woohoo! Thank you so much for having me here. Super excited.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. I think it's inspiring. Like, when young people ask me for the best advice I can give them in life, I always say, like, try to own real estate at the youngest age possible, right? Because it's just a wealth generator over time. So just to hear that you got your first property at the age of 21 is really awesome. So really want to dive into your story. I know you have a lot to share here, but yeah, give us a quick background. Like, how did you get started with all of this?
Yeah, so basically, I knew I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was like no doubt in my mind. I was going to have my own business. Like the show Shark Tank back, when I was a teenager, I was like, geez, if I can just be one of these sharks, make the shots, make all this money, that's the dream. And then I went to college because that was just like the thing to do. And my first day of college, I actually made a video. I didn't tell anybody about the video, but I made a video on my phone, just like kind of selfie style, saying, I'm in college, I'm going to work my butt off so I don't have to be sitting in an office chair when I'm like 30, 40, and I can be on the beach and doing whatever I want. So I had that goal like from the start, and I actually posted that 4 years later on my Instagram after I ended up dropping out. But to go back a little bit, I knew I wanted to like be an entrepreneur. Didn't know any idea what exactly I wanted to do. My dad worked a 9 to 5. My mom was like more of a stay-at-home mom. But no entrepreneurial ties really. So found the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, the most cliche in the world. But when I saw him talking about real estate, I was like, he is the smartest man alive. Like this just makes so much sense. So long story short, I went down a huge rabbit hole over like a year and a half while I was still a sophomore in college of just learning, listening to podcasts, going through Bigger Pockets, the whole thing. And I ended up thinking that apartment complexes were the way that I wanted to go. So I went all in on apartment complexes, joined a mastermind group, and was basically hunting for these apartment deals. Fast forward like 6 months of hunting, a lot of great practice, but no results to show for it. And at this point, I was like a junior in college, and I was like, okay, my time's kind of ticking here because my goal is to leave college having enough income coming in where I don't have to get a job. And I just didn't see the path to it through apartments. So someone in the mastermind group said, hey, I do single family properties. Do you want to help me cold call and find deals? So that was kind of the kickoff to it. And we can go more deep into it. But with that partner, we bought 6 houses together over the next like couple months. And then 2 of them were fix and flips, 2 of them were long-term rentals, and then the 2 of them at the very end were short-term rentals, which was ultimately my introduction to short-term rental. Again, this was like while I was a junior in college.
And those deals, tell me a little bit more. Did you invest any money into that, or what was your role in those deals?
Yeah, so when I was, and this is kind of like a big thing for what I would tell myself again, and for a lot of young people, or honestly, regardless of the age, is when I was doing that, I had like literally like no money. I was a college student. I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, but I had like the hustle to network and talk with people. So before I met this partner that we ended up buying 6 houses together, first of all, like I said, it took over a year and a half or a year roughly from when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. So nothing overnight, but in between then, I was doing a lot of like tasks and helping people out for free. So someone was like, hey, I have like this newsletter. Do you want to help me write it? And I'm like, sure, I'm a terrible writer, but I'll try it. So I was just doing all these little things for these different real estate investors, just trying to get some experience. Didn't know exactly how I was going to get in, but I was like, let me just do something. So then that happened. Nothing ended up panning out. But with this one guy, he said, hey, I have some experience buying properties, but right now I'm having a hard time finding a deal. Plus, he didn't have a lot of money. He didn't have great credit. I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have great credit. So we ended up going the creative financing route. So basically doing seller financing. We did like 2 subject to deals, and we bought 1 property cash, which was the fix and flip.
Right. What's a subject to deal?
Subject to deal is something that honestly I don't even love that much. It's a unique structure. It's an odd one though. So basically, in the simplest form, we approached an owner. So this was basically like literally cold calling people who either like their houses were vacant. We called people who whose houses were on the market for a long time. All these different like niche lists you can pull. We were basically pulling them, calling them, saying, "Hey, we want to buy your house." Da da da. So we found this one person. This is leading to the subject too, and he said, "Great, like I'm looking to move right now because I just got a new job down south. I think something in the military." And he said, "My only problem is I just bought my house like a year ago, and if I sell it, I'm going to be losing money on it after commissions, all those fees, everything like that." So he's like, "I'm having a hard time, and I don't have any really cash in my name right now because we bought all these fancy toys, cars, trucks, all these things." So the solution to that, for us to take over his house and to give him the win-win of being able to go buy a property down in Texas where he was moving, was we ended up saying, "Okay, you just bought your property, you have no equity in it, and you want to move and buy a new house, but you have no cash either. So what we'll do for you is we will take over your existing mortgage that you just got, a nice VA loan, so super low interest rate. I think it was like at 2.9, something like that. And we essentially took over the payments. And that way, when he moved down south, he was able to apply for a new mortgage and show the mortgage company that he no longer has the liability of this debt because we're taking it over now. So that's kind of subject to in a nutshell.
Is the original market still in his name though, or do you literally take it all the way over?
No, it's still in his name.
Okay. And
Mortgage
even though
is
it's
still
in
in
his name, he's able to get another mortgage because he can show like, hey, I have a deal with these other people who are now paying the monthly payments.
Yeah, basically, and I'm definitely not a subject to expert. It's not, again, it's a super like creative, in-depth thing. Pace Morby is like the guy that I watch for this stuff. But yeah, so the debt's completely in his name, and basically he goes to the loan officer, and he just has to essentially prove that he's not obligated to that debt anymore via our contract that we have. And then when they're seeing how much he can qualify for, they take off, I think, 80 or 90% of that debt out of his personal profile so that he can now qualify for something else. Got
it. Okay. Yeah, and creative financing is something that I wanted to get into. It's something Eric and I are currently looking at a deal where we're figuring out some sort of way of creative financing as well. And I know it seems like right now with the interest rates being so high, it's more common for people to seek out these creative financing options. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about this. Like this subject to thing is one way to do it. But I think you've done other type of creative financing deals, right? Yeah,
I've done two really other types. I mean, seller financing being the most typical one. And I think that's like the most common one, especially right now, interest rates super high. I think seller financing is like, in my opinion, like the best way to go about creative financing. And yeah, that's actually the first Airbnb that I bought was bought using seller financing.
All right, let's hear it.
Yeah.
Curious to know how you structured it.
Yeah, this was a fun one. So basically, again, this was like the cold calling. We were texting different owners, and this house that we bought was on the market for like 300 days or some really long period of time. And at this point, we didn't really have we weren't going for short-term rentals. We weren't really going for anything specifically. We're just like, if someone wants to sell and we can make money on it, let's do it. That was just like the starting out mentality. And we found this house, and we found this guy who like really wanted to sell, but he couldn't sell because he was so stuck on his price. He went down a little bit, but he was so stuck on it. But we found this house. It was right on a lake. It was a pretty big property. Had like an outdoor full-size basketball court, couple acres. It was a really had a guest house. 6 or 7 bedrooms. It slept like 20 people. It was a big property. So we were looking at it and we're like, okay, how can we make money from this property? And we're like, okay, well, we could do Airbnb. But I guess going back on the financing piece, we said, okay, well, I guess really when we were talking about our strategies to even buy the property, that was important because it needed some work. So we're like, could we fix and flip this property? And we're like, and if we were to do that, we would just raise money, cash, because again, we were in that mastermind group, which helped a lot from that. So we'd raise money, fix it up, and then flip it. But we were like, honestly, the property was listed at like $800,000, and the previous 4 houses I bought with this partner were all between like 60 and 180,000. So to go to that leap of buying a house for 800,000 and taking that risk of a fix and flip, we were like, no, thank you. Then we're like, all right, well, what if we just bought it, held it as a long-term rental? We're like, wouldn't be the best option. So then we went to, okay, could this be a short-term rental? It's right on a lake. So we did some research, saw that the next door neighbor had their property on Airbnb, and theirs was like a lot smaller. It was nice, but it was not really anywhere near where this property could have been if we fixed it up. So we literally went on Airbnb, looked at, and this is not what we do anymore, but we literally just looked at how much they're charging per night, and it was like $1,300 per night in the summer. And we're like, okay, even though our property's bigger, better, all this stuff, what if we just got $1,000 a night? We ran the numbers and we're like, holy smokes, like if we could just do a little bit worse, even though we have a way better property, this would be a home run. So we kind of checked the box of like, okay, like we're going to go for this as an Airbnb. So when we pitched the owner, we basically said, listen, like we can't do the $800,000, the price is too high, but what if we did some type of creative financing? And this guy happened to be, he's probably in his 70s, maybe 80s, probably 70s. But he's had tons of business experience and he was like all for it. So for this one, truthfully, there wasn't like a whole convincing. He was like, sure, yeah. So we did 12% down, or it was roughly 100,000. So I think it's like 11 point something or 12 point something, 100,000 down. And we put $80,000 into the rehab. We got a 3% interest rate on a 5-year balloon, amortized over 30 years. So basically 3% interest rate, we had to either refinance it or sell it within the 5 years, but we had a really solid rate and was able to get up and running super fast.
Can you explain what a balloon is and how that works?
Yeah. So a balloon is basically, if you think about a traditional mortgage for a house, they take it's amortized over 30 years. That's like the traditional, like you can either have there's a lot of different options, but you can have a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. What this basically means is those payments are broken up so that you pay off the entire property in 15 years, or the 30-year option is they structure it so that after 30 years, the property will be fully paid off. So we had the same thing with this owner where we spread out the payments so that, hypothetically speaking, if we paid every single month for 30 years, we would pay it off. That's kind of how it was structured. But the balloon piece, where that comes in, is we don't have 30 years to actually wait and pay it off, because the balloon, what it means is, you can kind of think about it like an actual balloon, how it'll pop if it gets too big. Or if you think about it in this case, after 5 years, because that was our agreement, it pops and is no longer valid. Basically, our mortgage is no longer valid with him, meaning the only way to continue running the property or staying afloat then would be to either sell the property and then pay back the lender, the seller in this case, or it would be to just refinance with the traditional lender, like we're talking about, just 30-year classic mortgage. So getting creative, there's all these different levers you can kind of pull.
So I'm curious to know, like, if you have that 5-year balloon, wouldn't it be simpler to just get a 5-year loan from him and pay him interest? Why is there the construction with the 30-year amortized and then the 5-year balloon?
Yeah, so I mean the 30-year year amortization. The reason why that is important is because, number one, we're paying down principal. So it's not just like, we bought it for, I said 800. It was really like 790, but we'll call it 800. We put down 100. So now we owed him 690. So we didn't want it to be a straight debt deal where it was interest only. We wanted to pay some down over time. And we also wanted to make sure it was over 30 years because that means the payments are lower than if it was like a 15-year mortgage. So yeah, hypothetically though, there's no really right or wrong. We could have done like a strictly interest only loan if we wanted to. I guess we just didn't really, I don't know. I think part of it was like the principal pay down that we kind of wanted. But yeah, that's definitely an option.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, just kind of curious. And, one thing, I don't have much experience with, this is all new stuff to me. So that's why I'm asking you all these, basic questions.
Yeah.
But one thing that I've noticed, as we're looking at creative financing and talking to different owners of different, deals that we're looking at, is that there's no one way of doing it, right? On the end of the day, you just have to find a way where the seller is happy and you're happy, right? Whatever it is that you agree on, it could be anything, right? Which makes it a very interesting way to finance a deal.
Right.
It's also, to me, it's also very interesting because I feel like this is very unique to the United States. Like back home, like we don't have anything like this stuff. Like we don't even have 30-year mortgage, like, and definitely not a fixed rate 30-year mortgage. Like our mortgages are like at a maximum they're 10 years, and then you know what I mean? It's either you choose variable interest rate or it's 10 years, and it's very difficult to get a mortgage. You can't really do those type of deals where it's like, oh, you take over the payments and I get another mortgage. So like all that creativity and flexibility doesn't exist. So it's really fascinating to me, and I'm starting to understand why, especially in the United States, like owning real estate is such so beneficial, right? So and it's more doable. Like in my country, if you don't have any money, like there's no way you can buy a house. It's just basically, unless you find an investor who's just gonna entirely finance the deal, So yeah, it's very fascinating. It's lots of opportunity.
For sure. But what you just mentioned with like finding an investor to just fund the deal for you, kind of a funny story on that. So back in, I don't know, like 6-ish months ago, I bought a property, and it was it's a midterm rental right now. And so this is like, it's kind of, you kind of go back and forth because at the time, it was back in October, I had the money, so I just put up all the money myself. It was like all in like $30,000 to $40,000. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll just fund it myself. No big deal, whatever. And then I just did a deal like 2 weeks ago, and I needed $100,000 for it, and I just raised that. So yeah, the whole deal was $100,000 I needed for it, and I just raised that capital from a private investor. And we'll go back to the networking thing too of how I found this person, but it was honestly so much easier for me to, like, in the moment. It seems easier, like, I have the money, I'll just use it. But when you can like make yourself get more creative, even though I have, money to do more deals, if you can get more creative and use other people's money, it can just go a lot farther. Because now I don't have to like cap out at how many deals I do. It's just, I can only possibly cap out at how creative I want to get with them. So with this lender in particular, I was like, hey, I need $100,000. It's going to be about 6 months. I'm going to do some renovations, and then I'm going to refinance it, have no money into the deal, and I'm going to make just as much money, honestly, probably more money than the deal that I have my $30,000 to $40,000 locked up. So the private lender route is I think is super powerful. The one other thing I'll say about this, because everyone's like, Bailey, like your rich uncle must have given you the $100,000, which he did not. The way that I actually found the private lender, and this is just like, I guess general, but really applicable to anybody. From the moment I read that Rich Dad Poor Dad book, sophomore year of college, I made sure everyone knew that I was like doing something in real estate. Whether that is me just posting on Facebook about it, even people I didn't even really know that well, when I'd see them, they'd be like, "Oh, you're doing like real estate, right?" Even though if they didn't know exactly what I was doing, they knew I was doing something. So that was definitely a huge piece of me just talking about it. And then I was in a group called Toastmasters, which is like a public speaking group. I think it's actually international. Really awesome group. And in that group, and at the time when I was in it, I was more of like I was doing a fix and flip at the time. So I was like the fix and flip guy. Then I was a long-term rental guy. So like my identity might have shifted a little bit within it. But ultimately, I was a real estate guy to them because they don't know all these intricate details. So just by having conversations with somebody or with people, one of the people in the group said, "Hey, if you're ever looking for, private lenders or whatever, feel free to reach out. I might be interested." So that was like literally a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now. And when I needed money for this deal 2 weeks ago, I literally called him up and said, "Hey, I know we chatted about this a little while ago. Are you still looking for an opportunity like this?" And I called a couple people. They weren't interested, and this guy was. So point being is like, it's not impossible to raise private money. You just have to be vocal about it. And you don't have to have family members or any of that stuff. You can just do it from your network.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing that I've learned over the last few years, raising money and everything is people who have a lot of cash, they're looking for opportunities just like we are. It's an opportunity for both parties, right? Whereas I think a lot of people I talk to who haven't raised any money yet, they're in a mindset of like, I need something from this other person, but I don't really have much to offer. Where right. You do actually have something to offer if you can put together like a really good deal and deliver a good return to the investor, then they need you just as much as you need them.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
100%.
And that's the case with the seller financing too, right? It's like, because if for example, the deal that you did with the person who has like with the $800 house, right? $800,000 house, like, I don't know, the house that he was looking to buy in Texas, it was, I think. If that house would be only like 300,000 or something, he'd be left with $500,000 that he then needs to invest, right? So it also creates, because you don't really want to have too much cash lying around, especially now with the inflation, kind of being out of control, right?
Right. So
it's a two-way, thing. So, but yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the networking, because, that's also the number one thing I learned is like, in the end of the day, like, network, it's all about networking, right? They say like your net worth is your network, right?
Yep.
A lot of people, when they think of raising money, they're like, oh, there must be like a place where you go to meet that person, right? Almost like an Airbnb for people who want to invest or something like that. But it's really not like that, right? It's really just building your personal network, and like you said, like just letting the world know what you're doing. Let's talk a little bit more about like how some strategies that you've used to kind of build your personal network.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, starting from like when I was brand new, literally 19 years old, I just started learning about this thing called real estate. And I was just like, I had no idea what I was doing. I literally went on Bigger Pockets and I would message, each day I did more and more and more. I don't even remember at this point how many people I messaged. I ended up having like hundreds, if not a couple thousand messages in my inbox from Bigger Pockets of just people that I reached out to, just trying to spark up a conversation. That was like step number one, just talk to people. Going to like meetup groups. If you're brand new, like don't know anything, this is your one of your first introductions to real estate, like meetup groups are great. Even if you have experience, meetup groups are great. But like having conversations with people are huge. That's number one for just like getting yourself exposed in the real estate world, because what I find too a lot is everyone pretty much like, I'd say a lot of people know about real estate, especially like if the older you are, the more that you just know real estate is a good investment, whether you have properties or not. People just know real estate is a good place to make money. So the problem though is a lot of people don't necessarily have people around them who do real estate. So they're kind of just like, they want to get into it, but they don't really have people to get around like them who want to get into it. So the key for that is, again, go to these meetup groups, go message people on Bigger Pockets. And then also like community, Facebook groups are huge. I met so many key people throughout my journey, literally just through Facebook groups, interacting, asking questions, podcasts. I used to, every time I listened to a podcast, I would message the guest of the podcast, say, hey, I just heard your story. Do you have 10 minutes to chat? And I talked to so many high level. So just like getting myself familiar with it is number one. And then once you figure out, I mean, for the audience, when you're figuring out exactly which route you want to go, because you can't do Airbnb, self-storage, multifamily, and mobile home parks all at the same time, brand new. You got to pick one route and at least commit to it for a little while. Then that's when you go all in on that niche. So if you're like, listen, I want to get into Airbnbs, like obviously you're in the right place right now listening to this podcast, and then go all in. Like Jasper, I don't know if you have a Facebook group or other communities that you host, but that's what I always recommend for new people. That's what I did on the multifamily side, although I didn't actually end up going through with it because after a little while I realized it really wasn't right for me. It's okay to pivot, but I went all in. I joined a mastermind group. I got myself surrounded by people who could just expedite my journey and get me there faster. So that's kind of my overall spiel on it is figure out what you want to do from talking to a ton of people. Once you figure it out, get super narrow and then go all in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the biggest things is you can't figure everything out by yourself. Well, you can, but it's going to take so long, right?
Right.
And you're probably going to get some people reaching out to you now because the podcast guest you were on. I saw you were some other podcasts. So people are reaching out to you like, "Hey, Bailey, do you have 10 minutes?"
Yeah, I like I'd say a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I would talk to people for an hour. I would have like conversations on conversations. Now it's a lot more limited, but no, seriously, if you guys are listening and want to reach out, feel free to do so. Because I will talk to you, especially, I mean, no matter what stage you're at, but like when I started out and I was, again, 19, some huge people in like the multifamily space gave me like 30 minutes of their time. And I was like, whoa, like this is crazy. It was like completely free. So I definitely believe in the power of giving back, but it's also, yeah, it's huge. So.
Yeah. And you gotta be willing to ask for help, right? A lot of people want to help, a lot of people get fulfillment about, helping out other people. Right. So it's, that's where you have an expression that says, you have no, and yes is what you can get. Right. So it's like, if you don't ask, like you're not going to get it. So, right. So yeah, just putting yourself out there and reaching out to people and knowing that like, yeah, maybe like only 10% will respond and give you some time. But those 10% of the people that do like can make a huge difference in your life, right? Like you said, like can accelerate your learning, your growth, and your opportunities like massively. So, awesome, man. Well, love your story, and congrats on your success, man.
Thank you.
It's really amazing to see like at your age, you're doing all this stuff. Very inspiring. What's your goal for the next like, I don't know, 3 to 5 years? Like I know you have 13 properties now. Like you own 2, you manage 11.
Yeah.
You've got quite a bit of experience. Like, do you want to just keep growing your portfolio, or do you have like some vision for what your life's going to look like in the next 3 to 5 years? Yeah,
3 to 5 years. So, I mean, really, my goal right now is to. I have so many different things, but. My whole goal right now is to get to at least 10 Airbnbs I own by the end of the year. So 10 Airbnbs I own by the end of the year. And these properties I'm going for are more on like the smaller side. They're like $100,000 properties in like the Midwest. So super low properties, great cash flow. And that's kind of my first step. Once I have that cash flow, $15,000 to $20,000 per month coming in, from those properties, then I want to venture out into larger properties, cooler places, so stuff like that. And then also on the management side, going to continue to scale that as well. For sure. I'm in like 4 or 5 different states right now. So I want to, I don't want to grow in any more states. I don't want to get additional states. I just want to continue growing in the places that I'm already in. Makes the management side a lot easier. But yeah, and then 3 to 5 years out, geez, it is so, I mean, it's hard because things change so fast. Right now, what's most important to me is just honestly keeping myself one, I'm enjoying the journey, which I think is the most important part. And I just can see if I can get to my short-term goal in this year, I'll make some adjustments as far as like, okay, now what's next? Because I'll never be, if I get these 10, I'm not going to be satisfied with it. I'm going to keep wanting more. But honestly, what's more important to me now than I realized is like, I don't want to work the weekends. I'm keeping a balanced life. I'm happy. I like to travel. I've created a lifestyle that works for me. So 3 to 5 years, I just want to do things on like a way bigger level. More properties, more everything. But honestly, just kind of enjoying the journey as it goes.
Awesome, man. Sweet. Well, owning 10 properties by the end of the year. I mean, we're almost in May now, so about 7 months. That's a pretty ambitious goal. So good luck with that, and maybe I'll touch base with you on December 31st. See where you're at.
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome, man. Anything you want to share with the audience before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're looking to get into Airbnb, you're definitely in the right place. This podcast, truthfully, was huge for me when I was starting out in Airbnbs, because for my first property, when I told you we're like analyzing which strategy we should go for, I was like, I don't really even know how to manage this thing. So this podcast was huge for me, truthfully. So thank you for that. And for you guys listening, if you want to connect with me, Instagram's typically the best place. You can just look up my name on Instagram. I should pop up. It's like the Bailey Kramer. But feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to connect with me. I post about all things Airbnb as well. And yeah, that's what I got.
All right. Awesome, man. Well, appreciate you taking the time to be on here. And for the listeners, hope you enjoyed this podcast. And we'll be back soon with another one. So we'll see you then.